WWE legend Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has revealed that he has discussed a possible executive role with WWE co-CEO Nick Khan, plus an update on Becky Lynch's return from her shoulder injury. JBL and Baron Corbin, what's the plans for them on Monday Night Raw after JBL made his surprising return this past week on the USA Network? We've got NXT's results from last night, including Austin Theory teasing he's going to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase for the NXT Championship. Shinsuke Nakamura returns to the developmental brand. Plus, we've got some updates on Halloween Havoc coming this coming weekend. Plus, we've got the ratings for Monday Night Raw. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE. And let's start off talking about the great one, the People's Champion, the former WWE Champion, future Hall of Famer, the biggest movie star on the planet, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And he's revealed something very, very interesting when it comes to his possible WWE future, and it might not be in the ring, rather outside of it at an executive level in the company. This is fascinating because the landscape of WWE was completely flipped on its head back in July, of course, when an article from the Wall Street Journal was released accusing Vince McMahon, the then chairman and CEO of the company, spending what ended up amounting to around $20 million in hush money payments to former female employees. Now, this article led to an internal investigation, which frankly we believe at the time was ongoing due to a complaint earlier on in the year. But this investigation was ongoing against McMahon, which led to him and the company landing in a lot of hot water. Now, he ultimately retired from the company / resigned from the company on July 22nd of this year, with his daughter Stephanie McMahon and WWE President Nick Khan being named as co-CEOs of the company. Now, ever since the change in regime, fans have speculated about a potential sale of the company, with one name being thrown around as a potential investor being WWE icon, legend, future Hall of Famer, and previous WWE champion Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, The Rock has been making the rounds recently, of course, to promote his Black Adam movie, and he spoke to BNN Bloomberg about WWE and the company potentially being sold. He said, quote, "I've known Vince for a very, very long time, and he's a businessman. I think the key, if there were a sale of the WWE, is to make sure that whoever acquires the brand in that property, you've got to love the wrestling business. Of course, you can love the asset, you can love everything that comes with it, but you've got to love the professional wrestling business. Because if not, then you could kind of see the writing on the wall. 4 or 5 years down the road, what will happen?" Now, when asked about whether or not he would take an executive role in the company, The Rock said that he and Nick Khan have talked about that. He said, quote, "Nick and I have talked about that. We always enjoy that over a bottle of Terramina," which is his tequila brand. Nice little plug there. "I love the wrestling business. So I grew up in it. My grandfather, my dad started here in Canada, where his father was born. So I'm not quite sure if a board seat is in my future, but possibly other things are in my future for sure." Now, of course, when it comes to The Rock, it is rumored that WWE are hoping to secure him for next year's WrestleMania event in Los Angeles for a dream match against Roman Reigns. Now, can I see The Rock in an executive role in WWE? Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Now, The Rock's executive role would not mean that he's doing day-to-day stuff in WWE. He would be the type of person that takes meetings occasionally and, you know, maybe as an investor or has a percentage of the company or something of that nature, right? Look, The Rock is a very, very, very wealthy man, and also he's a very successful businessman. It's not just in Hollywood or in acting that he does very well. He's got several companies. He's got several brands at this point. He's the modern-day Renaissance man, for lack of a better term, because yes, he's got his movie career, which is his bread and butter at this point, but he's also got wrestling if he wants to dip his toe back into that. He's also got, of course, the XFL, which he now owns. He purchased, not directly from Vince McMahon, it's from a bankruptcy court, but he purchased the XFL. I believe that's set to launch later next year once the NFL season wraps up. As he mentioned, he's got his energy drink brand. I'm sure there are other brands he has. I know that Under Armour has a Project Rock line too. So it's not out of the realm of possibility at all that The Rock could buy into WWE or he could be involved on an executive level with that company. I believe he still probably has a merchandising agreement with WWE as well and a licensing agreement with that company as well. So nothing's off the table right now with WWE. And the moment that Nick Khan became involved with the company too, that changed a lot of things when it came to The Rock as well. As he's mentioned, he has known Nick Khan and I believe his sister for a really long period of time. And I think his sister is an executive producer on his Young Rock TV series, and they've worked with his production company, Seven Bucks Production, for a long period of time there. So there's an existing relationship that goes back a really long way, and certainly, again, nothing's off the table. Obviously, WWE is a publicly traded company, so a lot of that kind of stuff, if The Rock were to purchase shares from people, I'm not sure. Again, I'm not a hugely business savvy person, particularly when it comes to Wall Street and shares and stock prices, etc. I know as much as the layman does when it comes to that, but I wouldn't rule out The Rock becoming an executive vice president or a senior vice president, or maybe having a seat on the board in the future. We've seen that board members of WWE are actually CEOs or presidents or chair people from other companies as well, Barstool Sports, etc. So who's to say that The Rock won't have a seat on the WWE board of directors as to just almost an advisory figure of when they're making those big decisions or they're having those big meetings, that The Rock's involved in that, Dwayne Johnson's involved in that, because he understands it from both sides of the coin, as it were. He understands it from a talent, but he also understands it from a businessman, and also understands it from an entertainment aspect of someone that has been incredibly successful in Hollywood. He would be invaluable to WWE when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to his short-term future, I still do expect at this point The Rock to be involved next year at WrestleMania 39, Hollywood. WrestleMania goes Hollywood once again, Inglewood, California, SoFi Stadium. It appears that that's what they're moving towards still. We haven't seen any reports if that's confirmed, because I would still think that it's not totally set in stone, because if it was totally confirmed and set in stone, I think they would have announced it by now. I think they would have done what they did with John Cena and The Rock at WrestleMania 28. I think they would have announced it almost a year in advance, or to the point where the moment they could announce it and it was confirmed The Rock is going to be in Inglewood, California on this day, they'd have confirmed it, they'd announced it then, because it would do massive business. And it will, if it does happen, will do probably record business for WWE, and you want to milk that for as long as possible. So again, whilst I'm sure there might have been somewhat verbal commitments, I'm not sure if things are completely, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in that sense. But as far as an executive position with the company, as I mentioned, I wouldn't rule anything out at this stage, because WWE has changed a lot this year already. And here's to say as well, WWE could absolutely still be sold in the next 2 to 3 years, and The Rock could be involved in that, not as the guy that purchases the company, but he could be an investor in a consortium that decides to purchase the company. That's absolutely possible as well. So I think this year has proven you cannot rule anything out when it comes to WWE, certainly. Now, let's talk about Becky Lynch. Of course, she's out of action with a shoulder injury at the moment, and Fightful Select has provided a bit of an update when it comes to her future. Sean Ross Sapp, of course, it's their Patreon service. Be sure to check that out. Now, Becky Lynch has been sidelined for the last couple of months, but some expected her return in September. Now, early last month, a rumor did emerge that Becky Lynch was way ahead of schedule for her return due to a shoulder injury and would be back by likely the end of September. Now, Fightful at the time inquired about that, and nobody within WWE confirmed it. And even beyond that, Fightful are reporting that the company had yet to follow up with Becky Lynch about a possible return at that point in September, and was never ever slated for a September return. Now, upon sustaining her injury at SummerSlam, WWE's hope was that Becky Lynch would be able to avoid surgery and would return in a few months with rehab on the shoulder injury. Now, Becky Lynch was at the site of Raw this past Monday, but as of early September, Fightful were told that her doctors and physical therapists thought it would be at least a couple of months before she could get near a ring. There's no definitive timetable on a return as of recording right now. Now, those that Fightful spoke to within WWE Creative said that they were hopeful to have Becky Lynch back by the end of the year, but that wasn't guaranteed. They were being more optimistic in the hope that she wouldn't require surgery. Now, since that report came out, Lynch has actually appeared at a speaking engagement without an arm brace she's been sporting since she suffered that injury at SummerSlam. It was diagnosed as a separated shoulder. As I mentioned, the prognosis is that she would be gone for a couple of months, and the hope would be she'd be back by the end of the year. There has, though, however, as I mentioned, been a glimmer of hope that Lynch's rehabilitation is going well. She was recently in attendance at the Advertise Week New York marketing event yesterday, October 18, 2022. In attendance to discuss wrestling, WWE Public Relations official Twitter posted a photograph of Lynch showing she is no longer wearing that arm brace. Now, there are no firm details, as I mentioned, of Lynch's return to the active roster, but her not wearing the brace certainly is a positive sign. I would think at this stage of the year, and we are entering a period of time when it can start to get into dead space for pro wrestling, particularly in the late winter. If she's not going to be available, she's not going to be available for Crown Jewel. That's at the beginning of November. Very unlikely she'll be available for Survivor Series, which is at the end of November. Once it gets to that point, you would then start to say, well, okay, we don't need to rush her. We can just wait until she's available. If that's the end of December, if that's the beginning of January, that is what it is. And she can come back and she can win the Royal Rumble and she can face Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania, which I believe is the plan. And that's the key thing here. WWE doesn't want to and shouldn't rush Becky Lynch back if they've got big plans for her next year, particularly heading into WrestleMania season. We've waited so long, so long, to see Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey, babyface Becky versus heel Ronda at WrestleMania. We've waited such a long time, 4 years practically. We've waited for that, and we will have waited for that by that point. So you don't want anything to jeopardize that. You really don't, because otherwise that would be bad business by WWE. So I would suspect at this point they're being very cautious and ensuring she gets healed up in the right way and she can return back in time and be healthy for WrestleMania next year. Now, this was one of my favorite things from Raw this week. Baron Corbin's return to the red brand alongside WWE Hall of Famer JBL. Now, we've got an update on plans for Baron Corbin and JBL following their Raw re-debut. Now, on this week's edition of Raw, WWE Hall of Famer JBL made his return and announced that Baron Corbin had been traded to the brand in exchange for Rey Mysterio, who, of course, has been drafted to SmackDown. Corbin went on to defeat Dolph Ziggler on the episode, and Shaw Ross Sapp of Fightful has provided an update noting that the happy name is no more, despite Corbin using the same entrance music and graphic associated with the character. Now, logically, it would state that that's probably going to change in the future. The report also notes, though, that WWE didn't try to hide the fact that JBL and Baron Corbin are in cahoots. The duo was listed on internal run sheets for Raw over the weekend. Meanwhile, PW Insider has reported that JBL is expected to be making several appearances on the Raw brand in the weeks to come. Now, again, the way that it's kind of been reported here is that JBL is going to be around for maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks to begin this new Baron Corbin character, to begin this new storyline that Corbin's going to go on. But if Monday was any indication of where this can go, I say hold it out until WrestleMania next year. I really do. I thought that was the best thing on Raw. JBL, whether you like him or not, whether you your feelings on those backstage antics over the year, which there are several, and they're difficult to ignore, certainly. On Raw on Monday, he was money. He was absolute money. He got so much heat, and the way he just chastised that audience, that's what he does. That's what he is good at. That's what he can bring to the table even now. And he cut a promo better than 99% of the WWE roster did Monday night on Raw. And I saw the heat that's always on Baron Corbin anyway, but I saw the heat on Corbin there, and I saw the pair with JBL, and I went, you know what? This might seem a stretch to say, because how can you say that, Owen, from one segment or one promo? And Baron Corbin, is he ever going to be a world champion? Is he good enough to be a world champion? I saw JBL put the amount of heat he put on Baron Corbin on Monday, and I thought, you know what? With this pairing, who's to say that Baron Corbin can't be a world champion? We don't know what the status of the WWE Championship is going to be coming out of WrestleMania next year or going into WrestleMania. The expectation is certainly that the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship is going to be be split in half. I think that's the thought process, right? That's the feeling, is that, you know, Roman Reigns eventually will drop the championship to someone, and we'll eventually have a Universal Championship back on SmackDown and the WWE Championship back on Raw. Why can't Baron Corbin be WWE Champion? Why can't Baron Corbin be WWE Champion with the pairing between him and JBL? I think there's a real possibility. So I hope it lasts more than 6 weeks, because again, I enjoyed it immensely this past Monday on Raw. I really did. Austin Theory made a surprise return to the NXT brand last night, and certainly we've got some real curious aspects of the Money in the Bank briefcase now, because, of course, last night, must be said, the main roster stars were sprinkled all throughout the episode of NXT. They were going head-to-head with Dynamite, so they wanted some star power on the show. On the show, you saw the likes of Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and others appear on the show. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, the closing segment of the show saw Kevin Owens head back to NXT to mediate a Kevin Owens show with Bron Breakker, Ilya Dragunov, and JD Madonna ahead of their NXT Championship match at this coming Saturday's Halloween Havoc Premium Live events. Now, as expected, the show ended up in a big melee, which saw Dragunov stand tall, holding up Breakker's title to close the segment. However, just before the show went off the air, Monday Night Raw star and current Mr. Money in the Bank Austin Theory came out and stared at Dragunov, signifying he could, if he so wishes, cash in his contract to take the NXT Championship this coming Saturday. Now, this is really interesting because Theory has not had the best of luck on the main roster in recent months, realistically, once the new regime has come in. And with Roman Reigns holding both the main roster world championships, perhaps him cashing in on the NXT Championship would work around him not having to lose his cash in altogether. And I know people would say, oh, this is a massive demotion to Theory, and this just goes to show the new regime doesn't like him. In reality, this is probably the best thing for him. Because what's going to happen? He's not going to win the World Championship. And you could say, well, and he can hold it until Money in the Bank next year. Well, okay. But I think by that point, things would have moved on a little bit. I think him cashing it in on the NXT champion is probably the best thing for him. The best thing for, you know, the NXT brand, and get people talking, talk about a way to end the show. And I know you could argue, well, was it just a tease? Is it just a way to try and get people watching Halloween Havoc? Maybe. But maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But, you know, and maybe he doesn't cash in at Halloween Havoc on Saturday, maybe cashes in on NXT next Tuesday. That's a possibility as well. So I wouldn't rule that out. And again, because if he cashes in on Roman Reigns, he's losing. He's not going to win the NXT. He's not going to win the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship. That's not going to happen. So I wasn't against this. And again, maybe it's the best thing for him. Now, speaking of NXT last night, we also saw the return to NXT of former NXT champion Shinsuke Nakamura. The crossover between the main roster and NXT has been showcased a lot over the past few weeks. Now, also announced for last night's show was a match pitting Channing Stacks Lorenzo against an unannounced opponent of Tony D'Angelo's choosing. The opponent was revealed to be none other than former NXT champion Shinsuke Nakamura, making his return to the show for the first time in 5 years. Now, Nakamura has been in Japan for the funeral of WWE Hall of Famer Antonio Inoki recently, and was appearing sporadically appearing sporadically, as I mentioned, on WWE since the change in regime, last competing in a failed attempt to take the Intercontinental Championship from Gunther. Nakamura is a two-time NXT champion, once being positioned as the face of the brand during his year on the show back in 2016. It's not been announced if this was a permanent move for Nakamura or simply a one-off appearance, but obviously we don't know if Nakamura is going to be there permanently. I mean, I don't see why not. You know, what's he doing on SmackDown? Not that much at the moment. So this could be what is the case going forward, as when talent isn't going to be doing all that much, they can just do a quick run, a quick 6 weeks in NXT and then move back to the main roster. So Nakamura might be no different. And if that is the case, that's not necessarily a bad thing whatsoever. Halloween Havoc, of course, is coming up this coming Saturday, and we now know the co-hosts for it. The upcoming NXT Halloween Havoc Premium Live event is set to take place this coming Saturday, and we know who will be on hosting duties for the night. Now, Shotzi, of course, serves as the host for the event in 2020, with Io Shirai retaining the NXT Women's Championship in the main event of the show. Now, last year's event was co-hosted by Grayson Waller and LA Knight, and saw Tommaso Ciampa retain the NXT Championship against Bron Breakker in the main event. Well, WWE has has announced the host for this year's version of the event, with Shotzi set to host the show for a second time, but she won't be hosting the festivities alone. She was interrupted by both Zion Quinn and Quincy Elliott, both of whom pitched to be Shotzi's co-host for the event. She then announced that their upcoming match would be for the right to co-host the event. Quincy picked up the victory, earning him the right to co-host the show along with Shotzi, so he'll be on hosting duties for this coming weekend's event. Also, it must be said, this is really exciting because the NXT conference call is making a return ahead of Saturday's Halloween Havoc. Of course, this used to be very traditional. This used to be a Triple H thing. Everyone used to look forward to these NXT conference calls because sometimes they would make headlines not for maybe the right reasons, for some of the things that Triple H would say, or he'd be particularly grumpy on those days, particularly during the Wednesday Night Wars when some questions would be about AEW. Nevertheless, the conference call is on its way back this weekend, so I'm excited to hear what Triple H has to say about that. Finally, we have the ratings for this week's edition of Monday Night Raw, and the viewership figure and demo rating for Monday's edition of Raw on the USA Network has been revealed. Per Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, Raw drew 1.803 million viewers. This is down, though, from last week's edition, which was the season premiere of Raw, that drew 1.824 million viewers. Now, in the important 18 to 49 demographic, Monday's Raw scored a 0.50 rating. This is also down from the prior week, where a 0.55 rating was scored by the season premiere of Raw. Now, Raw ranked number 5 in the demo on cable for the night, and the demo rating was down by 10%. Of course, the episode featured Seth freaking Rollins, defeating Matt Riddle to retain the United States Championship in the main event. So, I think, though, considering the competition, considering the time of year, NFL season, sports competition, etc., they'll be happy with 1.803 million viewers, because I think that's a good indication that once the NFL season closes and they head into WrestleMania season in the spring of next year, around March, April time, logically, you would say they're probably going to be doing over 2 million viewers, certainly, maybe 2.2, 2.3, which, considering Raw in recent years, that would be excellent numbers for WWE. So there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.